Been picking up. Oh, that's a talent.
Oh yeah.
All
Oh
right,
man.
so let's move on. We're gonna do a deep dive into the meta right now, and we don't know how far we'll get, but what we do here is that we'll discuss the various characters in each different classification, whether it's tank, bruiser, assassin, melee assassin, support, and so forth. And we'll see where each character stacks up at the different play levels. So we'll have Scott Bacon talk about master. We'll have NotParadox talk about grandmaster.
Wait,
And
wait,
then we'll
wait,
have
wait,
all.
wait,
Uh,
wait, wait,
And then
wait,
we'll
wait.
have Backpack talk about gold, and then we'll talk about I'll talk about bronze and silver. All right, so support. So lately in the HEC, at least in Europe anyway, Deckard Cain has been the cat's meow the last 2 3 weeks. So is Deckard Cain now the best support to play at the higher levels? So let's go to Scott for this one first.
No, he is not.
Why?
But he's
Moving on.
definitely up there. I'd say Deckard Cain, Malfurion, and Rehgar are the top three. But it's not like he stands out above the others.
Is that because Deckard Cain requires more coordination to get the proper healing output?
Well, he requires coordination, but he doesn't have a cleanse. He doesn't have any sort of burst healing. So he fits well into a lot of comps, but he's not like as good as Malf was a couple months ago where he was a top choice all the time, every time.
But I mean, like you would think that like in HEC the lack of cleanse would have a bigger issue, and that he's still highly prioritized. I think I saw him picked first overall a few times last weekend in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, he's good. If you're going, on the offensive and you're utilizing that crowd control to get kills, you don't necessarily need cleanse if you're forcing the other team to be defensive.
So is it basically that maybe Deckard Cain fits really well with dive comps because he can set up a lot of kills with his combo with his W and E then, or
Yeah, I mean, he's good at zoning. He could set up kills with his combo, with his slow and root combo. He can also zone people. So he's got stay a while and listen, which at the HGC level helps set up a lot of kills. So I mean, he's got a lot of tools that make up for not having a cleanse or burst heal. So he's very solid right now.
all right? What do you think about what do you think about Deckard Cain, not Paradox?
I think honestly, I think Scott's on the money. Like I don't think he's exactly where Malfurion was, but I think the reason that we see him so much in pro play and in the Grandmaster level is he doesn't have a bad map. Every map he does really, really well on, and there's maps that he thrives on, maps that he can place potions out ahead of time where where people are going to be, where people are going to take damage. Clustered areas, he thrives because he has great CC. He counters specific healers that have predictable healing because he's got Emerald. He counters a lot of people that might have to get in an aggressive position to do any of their combos, like maybe a Ragnaros or anything, who might need to get in an aggressive position. You can quickly throw a Sapphire on someone. So the pros are picking him because he fits in a lot of situations. He thrives by setting up a lot of different kills. He doesn't really need cleanse. I talked to someone else. There's a Master Grandmaster player. We're talking about why some heroes have cleanse and why some don't. We've kind of come to the conclusion that they're removing cleanse from everyone that has a way to set up a kill. And Malfurion was kind of the last one that they removed cleanse from that had this capability, where Malfurion could set up kills by doing a root, and then he could walk up in Twilight Dream. And that person was then rooted and silenced. And so he can set up kills by himself. He doesn't need cleanse. Cleanse is for people who can't set up kills by themselves. So they're used to counter the setup of a kill. And so that's kind of what we figured out what Blizzard's mentality of cleanse is. So if you have Deckard, you don't really need a cleanse because you're going to be setting up kills with Deckard between his Stay While Innocent ult or between just his large root. And he's also just he's picked a lot in higher ranked plays because he's also very hard to kill. Even when he's not near his team and he doesn't have that armor, he still has some of the best self-healing in the game, seeing as all of his heals heal a lot to one person. He can set up heals ahead of time in the back line, and He also at 16, if you need to, has a stun that he can do really quickly. But overall, he's just a safe healer that works on every map, which is why I think he's a go-to in high ranks just about at any time. There are heroes that are better than him at certain maps. I mean, Alex Straza peaks ahead on maps that have short objectives because she can just drag in for the duration of that objective. He falls short of Malfurion in the compositions that Malfurion kind of pushes ahead. But otherwise, he's just an all-around very, very strong healer. But I do definitely agree with Scott. I don't think he's like a must pick in any situation. I think he's just a safe pick in every situation.
He's also one of the few healers now that can actually deal with poke well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. If you got a Chromie or something, or like a Lee-Ming or Hammer, like Auriel's not going to cut it. Malfurion might have trouble depending on how many W's he can get off. But Deckard, you just stand next to your friend and just throw potions down.
All right, what do you think? I'll backpack at the mid-tier level. Deckard Cain.
He's not very good. Just because any type of heal that's not targeted can miss you. Or just say, that 90% Johanna grabs that, potion from a 10% Vala. It's like, come on, man, that's not for you. It happens way more often. So he's okay, but he just doesn't. If your healer's bad, then you can't target whoever you want to. So if you dive in, let's say with like Diablo, there's no heal for you. You can't expect that, which makes it really, really rough. So he's okay, and he's played a lot, but he's not really played that well.
Yeah, you do definitely have to rely on your teammates knowing how the potion mechanic works.
Yeah. Awareness of your teammates,
but there's some ways you can play around that, because like let's say you try to hit them with a potions and you miss, and obviously sometimes it's really hard to hit depending on how fat they are, but let's say you throw the potions, you miss, and then they turn around to walk towards the potion, just throw another potion at that exact same spot. That way they pick up two at once. Little tricks like that you could make up for their lack of awareness, or
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with all backpack. I think if you're in gold or below, he's kind of trash tier, to be honest. And in Hero League only, I think he's not. You shouldn't bother if you want to win the game anyway.
It's not trash, but like Rehgar gives more healing because Rehgar presses Q on you. It doesn't miss you.
So speaking of Rehgar, is it a consensus that W build is the way to go right now?
I don't know. I wouldn't say so. I think W build is probably the best for a main tank that is going to be in there all the time, because you're going to have essentially infinite mana, because you just toss a W on him. He's going to be doing damage to everyone. He's going to have a ton of mana back, and he's going to be just really, really scary, and you'll still have heals on everyone. But I think if you picked Rehgar into a composition with either multiple tanks, having that totem is still, the totem heals 20% of their health over like 10 seconds. I think that's still very important. And a lot of people are picking up the Q reduced cooldown talent now that it costs less mana at level 13. So I think, honestly, with multiple tanks, you go a variation of his old build. And with a single strong tank and possibly still a bruiser or something, I think the W build is definitely the strongest build. But I just think it does struggle if you have multiple tanks that are all taking damage at the same time, because you can only put a shield on one person at a time. Your heal isn't going to be like the best thing in the world, and you have nothing to heal them all up at the same time. So I think he definitely, I don't think W build is the only thing to go anymore. I think that it's situational based on your composition.
So
yeah, if they have like a gray main, someone you want to empower and make sure they get that kill, W build is pretty good. But if you have like a double tank with double backline, then it might not be the best. Your tanks might not survive it. So you go like the wolf run at level 1, you go totem at 4, cleanse, ancestral, and then maybe tidal waves, the cooldown reduction on Q at 13, and then maybe Earth's Grass totem at 16.
I heard on that the Koreans or the Chinese in the HGC are using Bloodlust now. Like that's in vogue over there.
Yeah,
Wow.
that and Europe. Yeah, Europe's using Bloodlust now as well. It's coming back. And I thought Bloodlust was kind of a strange one to disappear, because it was never nerfed since the Press R to Win meta. The only thing that was changed was Earthquake and Raynor's ult, which were, if you guys remember, is about 2 seasons ago. They called it the Press R to Win meta, because there was a lot of heroes that had ults that synergized really well together. And so people would do like, they would go in, they would Earthquake. Then during the Earthquake was going off, Raynor would use his ult. You'd have Bloodlust, and then it would just take out an entire team. Well, Bloodlust was never actually changed, but the other two ults were nerfed. So I thought that was strange that Bloodlust completely disappeared from the meta, yet the other two stayed. And I think it's because we had a lot of magic damage. But now that we have Raynor, Phoenix, Greymane, and all these other heavy physical damage people coming back, we are seeing Bloodlust return, which is, I don't know. I actually really like it. I like to see him have more than one ult now.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. And Blaze got added a couple months ago, which helps counter the R meta as well, where you hop in a bunker and all of a sudden you're not getting bursted down super quick.
Okay. So Bacon, you to begin Hero League this season, you were playing a lot of Auriel, and we don't see Auriel ever in HUC that I'm aware of. If you do, it's like once a weekend, right? At least in Europe.
Yep.
So what do you think is Auriel kind of like the next tier below everyone else? Like you have the the Rehgar, the Deckard Cain, and like Malfurion, and then Auriel is like well below, not well below, but like the next tier below that.
Yeah, for Hero League, for competitive play, it's a little hard because the biggest issue with her is her 4-second heal. And even if you get really good, perfect 5-man heals off, full hope, like it's still 4 seconds until the next one, and she doesn't really do much outside of that. Like she's good if you're winning. If you're winning, your team is healed like to 100% the entire team fight. But if you're losing, she has trouble generating hope, especially if you don't have a hope battery. And her whip is really only good as a follow-up CC to actually secure kills on a target. So if you're losing the fight and you're unable to keep up with the healing, then your stun's kind of useless. And her Q is actually, depending on what build you go, her animation is actually long or too long. So you find yourself in dangerous situations if you're trying to use your Q to hope generate. So she has her Aegis is really good for anti-burst, obviously. But if they have more than one wave of burst, like let's say Genji goes in and does a good amount of damage to the backline, you're forced to use hope, and then Genji goes in. You have no hope now. You're forced to use Aegis, and then they dive on the backlines. You don't really have many options as Auriel. But if you're able to protect your backlight from dives, have a battery, do sustained team fights over a long period of time, then that's where she shines.
Okay. And quick question, NotParadox, are you happy with the additional ban for ranked play and unranked?
Oh yeah. I think it was definitely needed. I think people were worried it would have a lot of negative effects. I mean, particularly in the support area, but people were mostly worried about that because they said it was going to be 2 extra bans in the second area, not the first ban, but the second ban. They were going to add both of those then. And that's usually when you ban like what's needed on the team, because supports were always last picked, or not always, but we see that commonly happen in Hero League anyways, where supports are picked later. So I think the worry was that the first 2 bans would go to like your Genji, your Raynor, all your like usual stuff at the beginning. And then the second 2 bans is usually like, oh, let's get rid of their tanks and supports. So people were worried 4 bans would clean up all the rest of the supports in the meta. But seeing as we got a lot of support changes and the bans got shifted to the front, I think overall, I would say most people are pretty happy with the more bans. I personally am. I mean, there's a lot of heroes. Usually on a map, there's 2 heroes that are really strong. And then in the meta, there's usually 2 heroes that are really strong. So to be able to clean those up before the game even starts is really, really nice.
Yep. What are the first 4 bans you're seeing usually? I'm seeing Genji, Auriel, Garrosh, and then like a map specific. Or right now, Raynor.
Or Tracer, maybe?
Yeah, those are probably the top 4 bands.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The cancers.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other supports you guys want to talk about? This is an open question to everyone. Anyone Any character you guys want to talk about?
I mean, I could rant
Heresy.
about Malfurion for days, but
Oh, yeah, I heard
I
that.
saw you-
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because you had that rant a couple weeks ago, but with the Rehgar changes, how
It-
do you
yeah,
still
that is
feel he's that
actually-
strong?
I mean, again, I think they kind of fixed a little bit of my problem with Rhaegar's side, anyways. But ultimately, my thing about Malfurion is he fits a lot of team compositions that no one else fits, and they can nerf him as much as they want to, but without adding something to fill those niches. What's going to happen is if they nerf Malfurion enough, instead of like Malfurion just disappearing, which is what's going to happen, he's going to disappear, and so are those team compositions. As we saw, when Tassadar got nerfed, Tracer got nerfed, even though Tracer never got nerfed. But then when Malfurion got buffed, Tracer came back into the meta. And then when they started nerfing Malfurion again, they had to buff Tracer to make it compensate for the nerf that they gave to Malfurion. And I'm like, that shouldn't have to happen. If you nerf one hero, you shouldn't have to change like everyone else who that worked with just to keep that playstyle in the game. You need to find another person who can fill that area. I think Malfurion just fits too many areas, and he's not like that great right now. If you ever look at like his healing in general, he's almost always like half of a Stukov, half of a Deckard, half of an Alexstrasza, half of even like sometimes Rhaegar healing these days. He just heals very low. So it's just the fact that he's the only one that really thrives with someone who's diving in for a long time. Like one individual person, he can toss a healing over time on them. They can dive in for 20 seconds, and he can keep healing them forever. And we have no one else who can do that. So if they ever wanted to nerf that aspect of him, they would pretty much need to buff all dive heroes, or that dive meta of a single dive hero is going to disappear completely, that whole composition. Which, don't get me wrong, some people would be happy to have Genjis and Tracers disappear from the meta. But I think it's unfair to have that happen purely because of that. So at the end of the day, I don't really... I just think that they need people to answer instead of just keep nerfing Malfurion, I think they need to have people answer the problem by bringing out heroes, or at least reworking them to where they fill the niches that he fills in ways that they do it better than him, so that he can still be good for general compositions that you're not really sure what you need. You need a little bit of everything, but you don't specifically need one thing. Right now, he fits way too many things, and he fits them way too well, but he's also not that great of a healer. He just fits those so well that they can't nerf him again.
Yeah, well, he's got a ton of utility to where he doesn't have to be that great of a healer.
Yeah, and that's honestly my big problem about him. It's just that. But overall, I mean, he's fun to play. I like him. I don't know. It was funny too. So when I made that video, I mentioned it to a Blizzard employee too, and I was like, the one thing that I think they definitely need to do is they need to bring out Zenyatta, and the Blizzard employee's like, that's the easiest answer you could think of, is to bring out a brand new hero. And I said, it seemed, I'm like, I know you're working on Zenyatta already, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I said, I know you're working on Zenyatta already, and one of the employees shook her head no. So I think we've got another 6
like this.
lead.
No, I'm not working on it.
No. So
No.
That was the employee lying to you to try and not give away that she's actually going to be coming out soon.
Did she say no? Of course not. Gave a nervous laugh and then grabbed you by the collar and pulled you aside. Like, what the fuck have you?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but it sounded like an actual no, because I wish they would though. I mean, I think he would answer one of the problems. And I mentioned that in the video too. I said we need like someone to answer the dive composition. We need someone to answer the full dive comp, which I think Rhaegar's kind of holding his own on that now, because also we've got Bloodlust back. So I don't know. I think overall it's a topic I could go on for a long time about. But other healers in the meta, I think I'd love to hear from Bacon on this too, because I know he's a support main. I personally think that it's a really good meta for healers right now. Like I don't feel like I have to pick a certain healer at the beginning of any game. I feel like if we need blinds, I'm safe to pick Lily and no one's gonna like complain about that. If we need If I'm not sure what we need, I can pick Deckard. No one cares. I can pick Malfurion. No one cares. I can pick Rehgar. No one cares. Auriel is the same way. I mean, Auriel was out of the meta for a while. You can pick Auriel now. Even Ana, same thing. Like, you can pick her, and no one really complains. And I think that's the favorite part about having a meta like this is you can pick just about anyone, and no one's gonna really care. Like, they don't mind. Like, before, if I picked Auriel, Ana, or Lily in like a season or two ago, I would always get hate for it. And especially in like master level, you pick Lily last season, people would just like, they would always trash you. They'd be like, oh, Lily's bad. And it's like, she's not that bad. And then BBJ plays Lily once, and now everyone lets you play Lily. But I do think this meta right now for supports is pretty nice, personally.
Yeah, it's not bad. I think there's definitely two tiers. The one that's always okay, and then the like Rehgar and Deckard, and there's a tier right below that, and like sometimes you have to fight for it. It's not as like I'm not gonna pick Lily any game, but if there's a good reason to pick Lily, I usually don't get shit for it, but most of the time. But yeah, it's a pretty good meta for supports, I think.
Unless you're Lucio,
that aren't good.
Unless you're Lucio, yeah.
Well, Lucio's not.
Lucio
that bad.
has his moments
Brightwing's
too,
terrible.
yeah. Brightwing is the only one that's completely out, in my opinion.
Tirana needs a rework.
again.
She's got nothing.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
just consider her an assassin right now. I'm just like,
True.
yeah. I mean, you can pick her with like a Kharazim or something to where it's like you can kind of fill a little bit of the heal deficit, but overall, I pretty much just think of her as an assassin.
Yeah, but there's definitely 3 or 4 healers that just fit into any comp that you want in Hero League, right? Let's not be too picky.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the rest of them, as long as you have a somewhat like decent argument that makes sense, or you're proficient with the hero and you have the history to back it up, then no one's really gonna complain. Like I picked Auriel, like I straight up picked Auriel like at a 70% win rate towards the end of last season. Like I played like 60 games with Auriel, what 60-70% win rate, and I would force her into every game, and then people would be like, I had one game where someone said, we shouldn't Auriel in this game, and then another player said, he's got 70% with Auriel, let's just let him pick Auriel, and then we ended up winning the game. So it's
Yeah.
things like that happen more and more. And
That's a really nice mentality to play in. I wish I was in Master.
Yeah, that happens sometimes with me as well, but it's a Tassadar, and people are like, oh, he's got a 78% win rate with Tassadar. Let him play Tassadar. I'm like, it's not a good map for Tassadar. They're like, oh, but you're good with him. I'm like, that's the whole reason I have that win rate. It's because I only picked him in like the one time he's actually good.
or you're like,
let's not pick him because I don't think he's good right now.
or you're Procraft, and you're just picking Asmodan.
Just pick him anyways.
Oh, I mean, it's good news for Procraft now that Asmodan's good, but goddamn, you know that he had a losing win rate on Asmodan?
Did he?
He had like a 45% win rate over like 300 games on Asmodan.
It's hard to win with Asmodan at the higher levels.
Well, if you force
bad.
him, he's a great Asmodan, but if you force him into every comp, and then he definitely tilted some people. I can
think
imagine.
That's one of my challenges about one tricks in general is like I'm okay with someone saying like I'm an Asmodan main, and then you get into a Tomb of the Spider Queen, which Asmodan has like a 41% win rate on. You get into that map, and it's like you can tell everyone, hey, I'm not going to play Asmodan this game, and everyone's like, oh, okay, nice, like that works out. And I think that was one of the challenges is like he would pick him into his worst maps, and I'm kind of the same way. Like there's a lot of healers that I like playing, and I get on. I used to like main Stukov last season, and I'd get on like Dragonshire, and I'm like, we're gonna be doing like 2v2s, and Stukov's not great in the 2v2, so I'm not even gonna play Stukov. And there's just times where there's a difference between like a main and a one trick, and I think people don't get upset at mains, but they do get kind of upset at one tricks.
How's my audio sound? Is it okay? My Skype crashed on me a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds
Sounds
okay.
good. All right. Sounds good. All right. All right. Anything else on supports?
I think we're good.
Okay.
We're good. Yeah.
So it seems as though that there's only 4 tanks now. There's Diablo, Murden, Johanna, and